Hi, my name is Darrell White. I'm with Blanche Media, and today I have as my guest Jon Stephenson, the owner of Commercial Noise. Thank you, Jon, so much for being with me today.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah. And first of all, I'll just go ahead and ask you, tell me a little bit more about yourself.
So that's a very complicated question.
I know.
It's answering that's always like filling out a dating profile. It's like, what do I say to someone, summarize myself? And the short version, I moved around a lot as a kid. I was born in Oklahoma, lived around the South, moved to Europe, lived in Germany when I was 9, moved back to Oklahoma, and then moved around like a lot more. I lived in Boston for a couple of years, so lots of travel. And most of my life, I've done things that excite me, which has been good and bad from a business place. I discovered early on I'm not a good employee. I'm a great boss. Well, I think I'm a great boss. Some people may not agree. But I'm good at doing my thing and very bad at doing other people's thing. And that's driven a lot of my decisions from starting companies to selling companies to working for other people. It's just that feeling of, well, I want to do this differently, so I go do it differently.
Tell me then, how did you get started with the business Commercial Noise? What kind of began that part of your journey?
Commercial Noise really came from, I worked for Teleflora, which is they're like FTD. They're a flower wire service. I got roped into being the guy that did the SEO, SEM stuff for this national brand. I knew nothing about it. I mean, my boss came to me and said, "So what do you know about SEO?" I'm like, I don't know what it is other than 3 letters. And so I went and Googled it and went through some training. I went to Bruce Clay training twice. He's kind of one of the big trainers at the time. And after doing it for one company, I liked it. I enjoyed it. So I started looking for clients and started finding more and more people that needed that service especially from a small business place of how do we get traffic to our website to sell our widget, our thing, our stuff. And I was at actually Search Engine Strategies conference years and years ago. And there was one of the sessions was on how SEO is just commercial noise. I'm like, that's a great name for a company, Commercial Noise. And it's been my number one brand for a long time.
Very cool. And what's kind of been your biggest challenge since you got started with Commercial Noise?
Focus, just 100% focus. I easily get distracted. We used to call it shiny object syndrome. And my challenge personally is that if something doesn't intrigue me and make my brain feel like it's working, I get bored. And if I get bored, I don't do a lot of things. And sometimes I'll be on a project with a client and I'm like, okay, this is the boring part. I don't want to do this part. Here, you go do this. And as a service provider, you can't do that. You can't let the client just go do it. You've got to help them along the way. And the same thing in building products is sometimes there's boring stuff. You've got to figure out, how does this fit within regulations? How does this fit within rules or laws? How does this help drive business? And that gets kind of boring sometimes. So focusing past that boredom has been my number one challenge.
And what would you say has been your biggest success so far?
Really, probably one of my first things that we ever built. I helped build a site called Find a Florist. And Find a Florist was kind of an online directory back in the early days of search engine optimization. It was 100% search engine spam. I mean, there's no way around that. It was search engine spam. But it had millions of pages indexed, and it drove hundreds of thousands of searches to our member florist sites. And I've done funner things. I've done better things since then. But as far as that's the biggest thing I've ever done.
Do you have a favorite marketing or business book that you kind of has helped you along the way?
Well, yes and no. So I love The Purple Cow by Seth Godin. It's a great book. Everybody that's in marketing has read it or should read it. But actually, my biggest marketing book, there's a book called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's just a book. Lots of people have read it. My perspective on that when I read it was different. It wasn't the big theme of the book, is the answer to life, the universe, and everything is 42. You just asked the wrong question. And in marketing, a lot of times I've gotten to where that is really what the perspective needs to become is, are we asking the right question? Are we looking at the right thing the right way? Is this how we see it, or is this how a customer is going to see it? because it's not about, especially as a marketing professional, my job isn't to make the thing about me. It's not even to make the thing that we're building about the client. It's about the client's customers. And having that perspective of, is this the right question to be asking, I think is hugely important from a marketing place. Being able to look at it and say, well, this may be what drives me and what motivates me, but what's going to motivate?
Good point. Kind of along the same lines there. Like, do you have a favorite podcaster that you pay attention to right now?
Well, yes, but it's not marketing related. I listen to Leto's Law. I love Leto's Law.
Tell me about that. What's Leto's?
He's an attorney in Michigan. He mostly does lemon law with automotive stuff. I get the feeling he's retired. I don't know that he's retired, but that's the feeling I get from watching his podcast or listening to his podcast. And it's usually 8 to 10 minutes every day about something in the news that's related to law, like some court case or something. So for me, it's interesting, and it's not related to any business function that I do. So it's kind of like silly putty for my brain. It lets my brain think and be active, but not think and be active about what I'm working.
Since you bring that up, and I know you kind of like follow your interest there. My dad's an attorney. So do you have any plans to like move into the legal industry at any point in the future, or is that
never?
Yeah. Okay.
Never. Well, like I said, the first business I ever started was for a law office. When I was 19, my very first company was a document imaging company. And way back in the day, we didn't have digital files. I mean, it just wasn't a thing yet. And I created a company to go into a law office and scan all their documents. So they had a paper copy or a digital copy, they could make a paper on hand. And like I said, I was 19, and some attorney friends of mine were like, you can't do that. There's no way to make this happen. We've looked into it. I'm like, there's a solution. I know there is. And so, yeah, my first company ever was for a law company or for a law firm. I did some work for them. But no, I would never want to be an attorney. There's too much specificity in the law. I like marketing where I can be a little bit more touchy-feely, go more with the feels than with the actual pieces of things. So
gotcha. Do you have any like YouTube channels or informative video series that you like to watch or pay attention to outside the podcast?
With YouTube, it's funny. So YouTube I treat like radio a lot. I just turn it on and listen to whatever's in the feed. But I do find that based on what projects I'm working on, my YouTube selections change. So like if I'm doing lots of video or photography work, I start listening to like Peter McKinnon stuff and things like that. But then when I start doing SEO stuff, I'll sometimes start switching over, like watch stuff that's on Moz's channel. I knew Moz back when it was just Rand Fishkin running Moz. It was awesome. But so kind of I listen to everything on YouTube, but then like I say, when I'm doing specific types of work, I'll start to narrow my focus on those things for a while.
Fair enough. And has there been, or what has been the most helpful resource or tool that you've used in your business in the past year or so? Google.
Always Google. Forever Google. I could not do what I do without Google. No, it's funny. It's I know lots of developers. I know lots of marketers, and they all talk about different tools they use for this and that. And those are all valuable. I mean, I've used lots of keyword tracking tools and content calendar tools. Right now, especially, I'm building a content calendar tool for a client. But at the end of the day, the most valuable tool that I think we have is information, and Google is the easiest way to find relevant information. YouTube, I guess, fits in with that because I watch lots of instructional videos, but really, I couldn't do what I do if it wasn't for the power of the Google.
So touching on that a little bit, I think we might have discussed this like off camera before too, but you mentioned Google, but there's this thing called ChatGPT that one or two people maybe have been talking about. Google has its own Bard, which I personally don't think is as good as ChatGPT is, and there's like several others popping up right now. What's your feeling on that and in the future of just kind of finding resources there?
I don't know. I'm old and cantankerous, and I don't like change. But I see value in ChatGPT for lots of things. I don't understand the value for ChatGPT in search because I don't want to have a conversation while I'm looking for information. I want to basically be able to have a magic machine that I say, what is X, Y, and Z, and get that answer back. But the reality is that answer has to come from some person putting it in somewhere. I don't have any way to verify the data, to check the data, to even put contrasting opinions together and see which one comes out the best. I only get an answer. It's like Google used to have their magic search box, the I'm feeling lucky button. I don't know if you ever saw that. And
Yeah, I've seen it.
Talking to the Google engineers, their goal used to be to have the I'm feeling lucky button actually be the tool you used. They used to take the metric of someone hitting the back button on a search result as a negative trait. They wanted you to take the first result and go. I find that doesn't work because we get information that's not accurate or not presented the way that I need to see it. So if I'm looking for the best way to, simple things like how do I make Alfredo sauce? There's about 5 or 6 big ways that you can do that are close, but they're not all the same. And so with ChatGPT, I get a response versus a list of responses that I can then evaluate. So that's my feeling on it. Again, I know I'm old and cantankerous. A lot of people disagree.
No, fair enough. I thought I'd just throw that out your way there. And no, thank you for the feedback there. 2 more questions for you, but next question is, what is kind of the most impactful piece of advice that you can give to those that are maybe looking to go into business themselves, either kind of in photography, video, marketing, website? You do a lot of things here, so like I'm trying to throw them all out there, but yeah.
So the overriding advice that I always have for people is do the things, whatever the things are. I've met lots of people in my career at different levels that are like, I want to get into X. Like, for example, I used to work in a collaborative workspace, and we had a guy come in that wanted to become a software developer. It's like, okay, so here's some resources. Here's some ways to go learn how to write software. And he kind of went and looked at them, and then he ended up enrolling in a software boot camp. And he went and took that and still like, I want to write software. Well, then go write software. And he spent 4 years or more saying he wanted to write software, but never wrote software. And the same thing with photographers. I know there are photographers that I've talked to, and I'm by no means a professional. I may be a skilled amateur. My wife has a much higher opinion of my work than I do, but just go shoot. Like when I first got my real camera, my first real good camera, which was nothing by today's standards, but it was fantastic for me. That first month, I probably shot 10,000 images. And I will say out of those 10,000 images, all 10,000 were garbage. But I learned how to shoot. I learned how to see. I learned how to look at things. And the next month, I shot 10,000 more. And I just kept shooting. And now I take my camera with me a lot of places, almost everywhere. And I shoot pictures all the time. And I have less junk coming out of my camera. Mostly the pictures are good now because I've shot enough that I know how to translate my vision in my head through the tools I have in my hands. And web is the same thing. Building websites, it's just about you build them. And eventually you figure out, that didn't work the last 10 times. Let's do this different. And you learn better techniques, better tools. Video, I'm very much a novice in video. I'm just learning. I've got new toys to play with. But I don't know how to tell that story in video versus a photograph. I can tell a story in a photograph. I can capture that moment and tell that story. But with video, I have to capture a lot of moments, like 30 of them a second. So it's harder for me right now to tell that story because I don't have that skill set. So my solution is rather than spend all my time reading books and technique and all these things, I'm going to go shoot video, see what works and see what doesn't. But a key part of that is I've also got an inherent ability to be okay with failing. My wife is a great example. My wife will not do things or resist doing things if she thinks there's a chance she's going to fail. As most people are. They don't want to fail. They don't want to be wrong. They don't want to have not done the right thing. Whereas I'm okay if I fail. because that just means I learned something. I learned what not to do. The story of like the light bulb. There's a story where Edison failed 100 times to make a light bulb before he made a light bulb work. And he's like, I didn't fail 100 times. I just learned 100 solutions that didn't work. And I think that's a very valuable thing, especially if you're going to be an entrepreneur, is you have to be okay being wrong and failing and learning from that and being better the next time.
Absolutely. Great advice. Great advice. Some of the best advice I've heard so far in the series. That being said here, Jon, if people want to get a hold of you or learn more about you, what's the best way to do it?
Right now, probably the easiest 3 ways to get a hold of me are my email address, and it's just J Stephenson, STEPHENSON, at commercialnoise.com. I answer pretty rapidly. My phone number, anybody can call me at 602-517-1533. And I'm pretty alert on my Instagram. I don't post a lot right now on Instagram, but I'm there a lot. And on Instagram, I'm just a few pieces. Yeah, let's stick with email or Instagram or phone.
All right. Well, Jon Stephenson, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time today. And I really appreciate it. Till
my
next
pleasure.
time. All right. Take care.